Hello and welcome back to another wrestling rankings video on the wrestling group. Today we're going to be ranking my top 10 WWE Midcarders to main event. So doing Midcarders in the WWE and then went to another company or another couple of companies and become main event stars. There's been a few over the years. Some of them have then returned back to WWE and continue to be main eventers, and others have just stayed elsewhere and continue to be in the main event scene. And so there's been quite a few over the years, hasn't there? That's been stuck in the main event, stuck in the mid card or stuck in the tag division, and then have left WWE and then found the footing and become something else. Like they've managed to go, basically as Cody would say, from undesirable to undeniable, if you like. As big as WWE are and as good as they are of in the past pushing talent that maybe wouldn't have got a shout, like Eddie Guerrero to be WWE champion, Rey Mysterio WWE and World Heavyweight champion, Chris Benoit World Heavyweight champion. They've pushed up some stars over the years, but unfortunately there's also been quite a few that should have been made stars in WWE, but they were never capitalised on. So then they left and went elsewhere to different companies, and became big stars themselves, either that be world champions or just being household names again. So I'm going to go through my top 10, and let us know what you think at the end. So we're going to start with number 10, and I'm going with Claudio. So Cesaro in WWE. He was mid-carder. Done the team with the Bar with Sheamus, and fantastic team. Like when they first put them together, I just didn't get it, because obviously Sheamus had been a former world champ, and Claudio should have obviously been a world champ in WWE. There was many that believed it, especially after doing, like, when we thought the Andre Battle Royal would actually lead to something. So we started thinking, well, why is Cesaro not a world champ? So anyway, obviously he leaves WWE as a mid-carder, and joins AEW. And straight away there was a big buzz about him in AEW. He come in to replace the injured Bryan Danielson in a couple of matches straight on. And since he's become a two-time Ring of Honor World Champion, and he's showing us all exactly what he can do. And we all knew he was good in the ring, but he's doing a lot better. He's changed some of his style. He's still doing obviously a lot of the same moves, but he just seems a lot more aggressive, a lot more hard hitting. Could prove that he could be in the main event. Held his own against Chris Jericho storyline wise, and he's done some really good things. The reason why I've only put him at number 10 is because I believe he's going to be AEW World Champ. I believe this is only a start. I think he's going to become a real big name within AEW and Ring of Honor. But I mean, if you think in the short period he's left, he's already been a two-time Ring of Honor World Champ. And like you say, it was unreal to think that they were never going to push him in WWE. I don't understand it. When you've had other champions in the meantime, your Jack Swaggers and your Jinder Mahals and stuff like that, and then you look and you think, well, someone as talented as Cesaro, yes, he was never great on the mic, but they done the short stint, didn't they, where they put him with Paul Heyman. It lasted a couple of weeks. I mean, if they'd actually done something properly with that, he could have easily been a world champ if they didn't want him. If they didn't think he was any good at promos, like being a Paul Heyman guy would have easily got him over with the promo side. And we all know he can do it in the ring. He can hang with the best of them. He's got unbelievable core strength. When he just picks people up with ease. And I just don't understand why they didn't make sure he was a world champ in WWE at some point. Even with the different ways that WWE have got to make someone a world champ, with the Money in the Bank, with the Royal Rumble and stuff, like Cesaro should have easily been a world champ. So in the short period, obviously, that he's left, two-time Ring of Honor world champ, is a great accomplishment so far. So we do expect, well, I expect big things from him in the next couple of years. Hopefully he stays in AEW for the next three to 4 years, and gets an AEW World Championship under his belt. But yeah, so that's who I'm going with for number 10 is Claudio Castagnoli, or Cesaro as he was in the WWE. Um, Number 9, we've got John Morrison, or Johnny Impact, or Johnny Mundo, or Johnny Insert Name here, Johnny Impact, Johnny Game Changer, Johnny Revolver, Johnny whatever you want to call him. Another one, mid carder in WWE. Tag team champion with the Miz a few times with Eminem. You know, and intercontinental champion, and he's great athletic ability. He's really good in the ring. Again, maybe lacks that little bit of promo and a little bit of character that WWE likes to push them to the next level. But again, talent wise, easily should have been a world champion. Even once, just give him a one world championship reign. And he was just never getting anywhere. So obviously when they released him, he then gone on to be Lucha Underground champion, AAA Mega champion, Impact World champion. He done well as Impact champ as well. He's picked up a couple of big world championships on the independent scene, and then again, like you say, in Impact as well. So again, another one where probably should have been WWE champion at least once. But again, maybe lack due to of character and promo work that WWE expect from their world champs. Maybe that's why he wasn't a world champion there in the company. But again, he's gone from being mid to tag team to going to the top guy in a couple of companies. Like I say, Lucha Underground, he was the top guy. AAA, he was the top guy. And Impact, he was the top guy for a while as well. And, he didn't seem out of place. It wasn't just that, oh, he's a former WWE guy, I mean, that's the thing is, I know a lot of people don't give Impact the credit it deserves. Like, TNA, I know TNA and Impact are the same thing, but a lot of people have high regard for TNA. And then since it then went to Impact, they don't hold that same high regard, which is strange. But if you look especially through this list, most of the time the company that has given them the chance to make them the world stars has been TNA/Impact, and it's mad because they see something in a wrestler that obviously WWE don't, and then they push them to the next level, and they improve on the areas that they need to work on. They improve on it. They flesh out the character a bit more. They give them more time on the mic to improve, and give them the right sort of people to go against to help them improve. And I feel like WWE should actually learn a thing or two from TNA and Impact, because they have made some of WWE's Midcarders main eventers, and then like you say, then WWE have then signed them back. It's like they didn't believe in them, and then they've gone elsewhere most of the time to Impact, and then it's like, right, okay, you've done what we couldn't be bothered doing, and now we're going to take them back. And it is so frustrating because obviously Impact can't compete with the contracts that WWE offer, and most people growing up are WWE fans, like myself personally as well, although I don't enjoy it as much as I used to. Everyone dreams of having that WrestleMania moment. Everyone dreams of holding the WWE Championship. Of course we do. We all do. We've seen it with Cody now. The reason he left AEW, everyone dreams to lift that belt. Of course they do. It's like the top belt in wrestling history, isn't it? You know what I mean? So I get why they go back, to try and become a world champion. But, it's just like, why should I put the work in when Impact's going to do it for us? And fans don't seem to give Impact TNA the credit it deserves for building their favourite mid-carders into world champions. But yeah, so number 9 is Johnny, insert name here, Johnny Mundo, John Morrison, Johnny Nitro, Johnny Game Changer, Johnny Revolver, Johnny whatever you want to call him, is number 9. So number 8 is going to be Rich Swann. Now, Rich Swann was Cruiserweight champion, 205 Live Cruiserweight champion in WWE, and he done well. He was decent, for the Cruiserweight division. They tried to rebirth the Cruiserweight division, and it worked for a while. And, had some fantastic matches through 205. Rich One's one of the guys who I'd watch a lot of. Cedric Alexander, another, Neville, those sorts of guys. And they were putting on some fantastic matches. The CWC was absolutely brilliant. And I'd love them to do another one at some point if they'd done it right. They did it right the first time, but then obviously then they made the division and it just didn't seem to work out. No one was really tuning in to watch it week after week, and then they tried to then move the cruiserweight division into Raw, which then didn't work either. But the tournament itself was brilliant. Rich One, he's a guy that they could have easily, even if he didn't push him to the very top, um, he could have been a US champion and an Intercontinental champion. There's no reason he couldn't have pushed him. Even a tag team champion. They didn't push him, did they? They just used him in 205, and then when it didn't work, they just got rid of him. And then again, he goes on to Impact and goes and makes himself a name. He's been Impact X Division champion. He's been the Impact World champion. And he's been the TNA World Heavyweight champion. When they'd done the storyline with Moose, and Moose brought back the TNA World Championship, which then they didn't obviously acknowledge for a while. It wasn't an official title, and then obviously Rich One was the Impact champ. But then they merged both the belts. They merged both belts, and Rich One goes and gets a win over Moose, and that was a big thing at the time because a lot of people weren't expecting Rich One to win that. So he then gets both belts, and then he ends up going against Kenny Omega, you know what I mean? And obviously he lost him, but all eyes on Rich One because, Kenny Omega was doing massive things. He'd not long been in Japan, and he built himself up in America through the tag division in AEW, and then obviously the AEW World Champion as he was at the time, and he starts doing a belt collector gimmick. So then when he goes over to Impact, everyone's watching Kenny Omega that's been watching AEW, that's been watching New Japan. So then all of a sudden it's like, if you weren't following it, it was like, bloody hell, Rich One, remember him in the Cruiserweight division, and all of a sudden he's the world champion of this company, but he done well. Like, I wasn't a fan of them putting the belt on him at first, mainly because I hadn't been watching the product week in, week out, and I'll admit that I hadn't been watching the product week in, week out. So for me, he was Cruiserweight champion, Rich One, and then they've put the main belt on him, which seems strange. And then obviously I tuned in and started watching the whole storyline, how it was unfolding, again with the stuff with Moose, and then going into Kenny Omega, and I thought, what, like, he's improved massively. He has improved massively, but TNA then took the time and put the work in to help him improve on his mic, on his character, and like his moves didn't seem, although he still does a lot of high flying moves, it's like Will Ospreay, he's put a bit of beef on. He's got a bit of strength behind him, and it's more heavyweight, although it's still, obviously, like I say, a lot of the same moves, but it's more heavyweight. There's more impact with his moves than just flying around. So, again, TNA took the time to make someone that wasn't a star into a star, and someone that I probably would never have said to be a world champion, but when he was world champ, it worked, and, he remains around the top spot. He does some really good stuff for Impact. And he is a guy that if he did go back to WWE, he'll probably end up back at the bottom of the barrel, which is sad, really. So I hope he never does. But again, it's the law, isn't it, of WWE. But yeah, so number 8 is Rich Swann. Number 7, Matt Hardy. Right, so a lot of people will be expecting Jeff Hardy in this. And, myself personally, I probably would have put him in. But I'd done some looking into it because I couldn't remember because it's been that long now, so I had to look into it. So when he left WWE the first time, went to Impact, and he was chasing the NWA World Championship, he never actually won the NWA World Championship in his first run in TNA, even though he did chase it for a while. So then he went back to WWE and he actually became a world champion in WWE, and then left and went back to TNA again because he was flipping between the companies for a while, wasn't he? So technically, WWE made him a world champ, although he didn't chase the belt and he wasn't in the contention properly until Impact. But, WWE were the first to put a World Heavyweight Championship on him. And then when he left, he technically left as a world champ, at that caliber. So I wouldn't put him in only because he didn't leave as a mid-carder and go on to become a main eventer. He left as a quote-unquote main eventer and then continued the main event. So that's the reason why Jeff hasn't made this list. So if you've tuned in expecting to see Jeff Hardy, you're not going to. but you will see Matt. So Matt Hardy for me, it's a funny one. Like the Hardy Boys, fantastic tag team. My favorite tag team of all time, over every other tag team. I absolutely love the Hardy Boys. I think they're brilliant. You know, I started watching. I started watching wrestling late 90s, and I was WCW, like mainly because that's all I could get. I didn't have Sky or anything like that, so I could literally watch WCW or nothing. So I was big into WCW, and then obviously when that ended, then it went when WWF bought them out, which is I think come up yesterday, about 22 years ago, something like that now. So then early doors 2000s. Obviously I started managing to get hold of WWF and started watching it, and obviously one of the main attractions for me early on was the Hardy Boys. Now in WCW, I wasn't really that fussed on tag teams. They were alright, like Harlem Heat. I did like Harlem Heat, but there was never a tag team that gripped me where I'd be like, oh, that's my favourite, you know what I mean? I'd watch the tag team wrestling, I didn't mind it, but for me it was more filler to get to the main event, to get to the main storyline, to see who's joining the NWO, to see who Goldberg was squashing, that sort of thing. So when I got to WWF and he started doing obviously the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, E&C, that sort of thing, I actually started to like tune in just for the tag team. Like WWE's never had a tag team division like what they had back in the day in the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, and Edge and Christian. They haven't had that tag division as good and as strong as that since. Um, but Hardys have always been great, and yet Jeff's always been more of my favourite because he's the flair, isn't he? He's the risk taker. Matt does the leg drops off the ladder, but Jeff flips in the air, does a swanton. Jeff does all the higher moves, the more death-defying stunts and stuff, and Matt does the more boring stuff. If you're a child, that's the way it is. So obviously, the only time the WE for me should have put the belt on him. The only time I seen him as a main event was the whole storyline with Edge. Obviously, the real life come into storyline with Lita. But then he starts going back and forth, and Edge was the WWE champion at the time. He had a couple of matches, and I thought, you know what? The fans were so behind Matt because everyone, Paul Matt, you know what I mean? Everyone was like, Paul Matt, he's been screwed. Edge is the bad guy. And WWE had the chance there to pull the trigger and make him WWE champion, and everyone would have loved it. They just didn't believe in Matt Hardy, which was sad, to be honest. And then not long after that, he was released. And he goes on the indies and does some bits and that and ends up in TNA. Now he then starts to create all these different characters like Big Money Matt, Broken Matt, and all these different characters, and he starts letting his creative juices flow, and something that he wasn't able to do properly in WWE. We got like V1 Matt and stuff like that, but it wasn't like unfiltered Matt Hardy. And when it finally started showing what he was doing, it becomes a 2-time TNA World Champion. Now straight away, back then, I was no longer watching TNA. I put at a period in time I wasn't watching WWE at all. I was only watching TNA, and then TNA started to dip for me, and I ended up getting sucked back into WWE. So then I went the other way and started only watching WWE, not watching TNA. But as soon as I heard that TNA put the World Championship on Matt Hardy, you can damn right I tuned in. I was like, what's going on here? Matt's finally a world champ. And, a guy like Matt Hardy, he comes in, he does the business, he does the job that they ask him to do. And, it must have been hard for him for all these years, seeing Jeff getting, all these accomplishments and stuff. And the only thing he really did with Matt that is anything is, apart from obviously the US and the tag, was they give him the ECW championship, but it was when ECW was in WWE was already dead. It wasn't at the very beginning when they were first trying to build it back up again. It was that silver horrible belt that they give to like Christian and stuff like that as well. And it didn't even feel like it was as big as a mid-card title at this point. It's like ECW was failing on its ass, wasn't it? It just wasn't working. They took the main part of ECW away where, they could pretty much get away with anything. Now it was like, you know, people getting disqualified in an ECW championship match, and it was just like, that's not ECW then, is it? So it didn't even feel like the caliber of the belt. It didn't even feel like a US or an IC title. It felt like it was even beneath that. And so, they didn't really do anything with Matt in a singles run. And, they kept trying to push Jeff versus Matt, but no one cared about it because they pushed Jeff to the moon um, and left Matt behind. So then when it was like, oh, we're going to do Matt versus Jeff again, everyone was like, well, why? What's the point? We all know what's going to happen here. Like, no one's backing Matt Hardy because they've done nothing with him. He's not a world champ in their eyes. They've never seen him as a main eventer. So then obviously, like I say, he goes into TNA and becomes two-time world champion. It was like, wow, what's going on here? So then, of course, you tune in, you go and watch, this fella you've been watching forever. Like you say, part of my favourite tag team of all time. I'm going to go and look, I'm going to tune in and find out how the hell he's all of a sudden become a world champion. But he put the work in, he put the graft in when he was in TNA to become that world champion. But obviously I didn't see that at the time. So for me, again, it was sort of like, hang on, you've got basically tag team Matt Hardy as your world champ. But so I started tuning into TNA again, and I ended up watching some great stuff, EC3, Matt Hardy, Drew Galloway, Bobby Lashley, so much going on at the time, and ended up being a really good thing for me to start tuning in again. But it was Matt Hardy that lured me to it. And again, he'd left WWE as in he was never going to be a main eventer, and even if he went back, he'd never be a main eventer, and he did go back with Jeff when he returned, when he'd done the Expedition of Gold. When they put them together in TNA, they become TNA tag champs, and then they went to Ring of Honor and become Ring of Honor tag champs, and then ended up winning the belts in WWE. And they were tag team champions, and then when they split them off again, whether it was this the time that Jeff got injured or something, probably, but they split them off and they tag teamed him with Bray Wyatt, and it was just like, you've got your chance, like the character and everything's been made. He was two-time world champion, and then after that, then come Broken Matt Hardy. Don't forget, he wasn't world champ as Broken Matt, he was world champ as Big Money Matt. So, he made himself established as a main eventer and then created this whole other thing. Like, Broken Matt Hardy become one of the most watched gimmicks in wrestling. Like, whether you were tuning in every week to watch TNA or not, you were watching clips on YouTube, you were watching clips on Twitter, on Facebook. Everyone knew what was going on with that character. It was the hottest thing at the time. No one had done anything like it. Everyone was tuning in. Like, you've heard the rumours of the WWE locker room getting together and getting a disc of the Ultimate Deletion and watching it out the way, so obviously they went and found out. Whether that's true, who knows? But just the thought of it's great. Can you imagine WWE guys huddled up in the corner watching an Impact match? It's fantastic to think, you know what I mean? And then obviously they go back on another tag team run and that, but it just felt different. They went for the TNA belts, they won the TNA belts, they won the Ring of Honor belts, and then obviously they won the WWE belts. But then they felt like two main eventers, then they felt like two heavyweight champions in the tag division. That was brilliant, you know what I mean? And like I say, Matt Hardy, for me, he was someone that should have been a WWE champ around 2006 in WWE, but they didn't pull the trigger on it. But TNA did again. TNA made him a world champ, and TNA put eyes back on the product for me. And anyway, I definitely tuned in to see that. So Matt Hardy, number 7. Number 6, Matt Cardona. Matt Cardona. You can't not have Matt Cardona in your top 10. I'd like to put him higher. I really would. I'd like to put him number 1, to be honest. Like, I absolutely love Matt Cardona. I could not stand Zack Ryder. Hated Zack Ryder. I didn't get it. Did not get it. The woo-woo, broski, all that. Couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand him. Couldn't stand Mojo Rawley. Couldn't stand any of it. I didn't get it. Wasn't a fan of it. And he got over in WWE, didn't he? When they didn't want him to, with the the Internet Championship that he'd created himself. Even then, I just didn't get it. I didn't care about Zack Ryder. And then obviously, just before, I think the time I started to like him, I started watching the Major Pod. I just tuned in, happened to watch it. I think it was on Network, and I tuned in and watched them. You know, where they go in stores and they buy wrestling figures and stuff. And I was like, oh, it's quite good, it's quite entertaining. And I started thinking, hang on, these have got a bit of actual personality here. You know, Brian Myers, Matt Cardona. And I was like, well, what's going on? And so obviously started tuning in and watching it. And then anyway, ended up becoming a whole different thing where I ended up going into wrestling figure collection because of them. I will blame them 100% because I'd never even thought about it beforehand. Obviously, I had the wrestling figures as a kid, bought some for my kids, but not actually to collect. It was not even a thing I'd even ever think of. I'd just got into Funko Pops. I wasn't looking at another collection. But I started seeing they actually had some personality. So in the last run before they were released again, well, before Brian Myers was released the second time, before Matt Cardona was released the first time, when they done that storyline where obviously Myers had lost so many times in a row, and then obviously they teamed together, didn't he, to win the tag belts. You know, that's when I first started to want Zack Ryder to do something. The first time I actually believed in Zack Ryder was that storyline, mainly for the major pod. You know, because I started to realise that WWE was keeping them down. And so yeah, even when he was US champion, IC champion, just didn't rate him. Didn't like when he won the IC belt. It was great for him at the time, you know. And I get that you could see the emotion, and then he goes and loses it last night, the next night to the Miz. I was more than happy with that. I was a fan of the Miz. I was not a fan of Zack Ryder. So the last thing I expected to be was a fan of Matt Cardona when he left WWE. But it just changed up so much, didn't he? He changed his gimmick, his style, everything. He was going to every promotion. He was facing all the top guys in every promotion around the world. He's travelling here, there, and everywhere. He's doing loads of stuff through Major Pod. He's doing loads of stuff through Twitter. His character builds. You know, it just put so much work and effort into it. He cleaned up in the ring. He's a lot better in the ring. He's fantastic on the microphone. You know, why he was never really given the chance properly to speak other than woo 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 and crap like that in WWE is beyond me because he's brilliant on a mic. Like I went to see him live in TNT last year, and he come out and everyone's cheering him and they're like, hey, you know, big name, he's doing some great stuff, and he comes out and everyone's cheering him, his music hits and everyone's going nuts. 2 seconds on the mic and everyone's booing him. Everyone's booing him. They're like, boo. It's like, hang on, you just cheer for him. That's how good he is on the microphone. So, you know, he's been Impact Digital Media Champion. You know, that's a big thing at the time because, you know, it was a new belt just starting. You know, he's won loads of belts in small companies and that. I mean, I could list a whole lot. You know, he's done the belt collector gimmick a couple of times over now, I think, with the amount of championships he's won. But it's got to be, for me, talking about the main ones. There's no point in talking about wrestling that or wrestling companies that a lot of people understand or care about, because if I then use that as a reason why to list them somewhere, people are going to be like, yeah, but what's that? So, I mean, Digital Media Champion in Impact, it was a new thing. They were just starting out. Joe Hendry's doing some brilliant stuff with it right now. You know, the GCW Champion, you know, GCW World Champion. That is the main thing that put eyes on Matt Cardona for me. Like I say, I was watching him through the major pods, but I wasn't really tuning in to see his wrestling stuff because I just thought he was doing the same stuff, just under a different name. And then I started seeing these videos and these pictures after he beat Nick Gage in GCW for the World Championship. Bear in mind, GCW I didn't really know a lot about, so I wasn't really that bothered. But I just seen these videos and these pictures of the ring, just all the stuff coming in, the cans and the bottles, and everything like covering, and I thought, wow, that looks like peak ECW times that. And then obviously I'm seeing the pictures of him absolutely covered in blood and everything, so I thought, hang on. And I went and found the match and I watched it and I was like, that was brilliant, it was so good. And then I just started to tune into GCW at one point near enough every time they done an event, just to see Matt Cardona more than anything. And then I started watching other guys like Blake Christian, Nick Wayne, and, you know, started putting eyes on people that I'd not looked at before. But yeah, that first where he beats him, and I just thought, oh my god, this is unreal. And he made it such a big thing. And then like his whole his whole thing where he then turns around and he's like, if I become GCW champion, which is like a sacred championship to these hardcore nuthead fans, I'm gonna take it to Disney. I was like, oh my god, that's perfect. Like that, it's the last place that you they would want their championship to be taken is somewhere like Disneyland, something for kids. I just thought it was superb, and he's taking pictures of it around everywhere. And he'd done the whole storyline, didn't he, against Rhino, where he got Rhino to bring the original ECW television championship, and he pins him for the belt, although it's not ever classed as official, because obviously WWE own ECW, so it's not classed as an official title win, if you like. But even still, it was just so good, such good fun. And again, puts eyes back on him again, people are like, hang on, what? Rhino's had this belt since obviously the company ended, and he's gonna bring it to defend it against this guy we used to go woo 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 and we're supposed to get, and then he beats him for it, and everyone's like, hang on a minute, and starts tuning in and watching him. He banked on himself, and he come off in a major way. And don't forget as well, he's been NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. That's a massive belt with a big history. You know what I mean? It's one of my favourite belt designs, if not my favourite belt design. I absolutely love that belt design. But again, it's a massive, if you think the amount of people that have held that, from your Ric Flairs and stuff like your Dusty Rhodes to your Christian Cage, your Jeff Jarrett's, and your Ravens, to, you know what I mean? There's some trash, like, who's holding it out. But, it's a big belt with a big history. So Matt Cardona, for me, comes in at number 6. Like I say, I would like to have him higher, but if we're being honest, I'm not letting the fact that I absolutely love Matt Cardona come into it. And then for me, he's number 6. So, number 5, Drew McIntyre. Drew Galloway. Again, he come into WWE with a big thing on his back, wasn't it? He was going to be, Vince McMahon's hand-picked this guy, and he was decent. I did like him in his first run in WWE, his Intercontinental Champion, his Tag Team Champion, he was decent, but you could never see him going to the next level, and then they ended up sticking him in the 3MB, 3-man band. And I know a lot of people like that, and it's got a good following, 3MB, but I never liked it. I didn't. I don't know why, I just didn't like it. And I think for me, when I seen him in that and what he was doing with it, I thought, well, that's the beginning of the end. And I could see it being the beginning of the end for all three, and it did. They all got fired, didn't they, one after another, and then started getting rehired again. But for me, it's just shown that he was on his way out the door, and they weren't going to push him to the next thing. They seen he was talented, and they wanted to push him really quick, and you could tell that by the way they made a big thing of him being Vince's hand-picked next top guy, if you like. But then he didn't give them what they wanted. So they lost faith in him really quick, and instead of taking the time to put the work in, they just moved on. I think that Drew should have been like Sheamus was when he first come in. Sheamus made big impact. But they threw Drew onto the main roster very quick. I think he was in developmental originally for something like 3 weeks before they then shoved him into the main event onto SmackDown. So he didn't have that time to be able to work on the things that they wanted him to work on. They just threw him straight onto television. So again, he comes away from WWE being fired after being Tag Team Champion, Intercontinental Champion, but never even looking like a main eventer, not someone that you're going to think he's going to be big time. Goes to Evolve, becomes Evolve Champion, fine, puts a bit of eyes on him, goes back to ICW, becomes the first ever 2-time ICW World Champion. Again, smaller audience, but, hardcore fans know who these companies are. And then, again, gets to WCPW, becomes World Champ there, and then gets to TNA and becomes TNA Champion. And again, it's eyes back on TNA, because TNA, again, have took a chance on another mid-carder in WWE. And a lot of people go, oh yeah, they just sign up ex-WWE guys and make them world champs and blah, blah, blah. Nobody do it right. Like when Matt Hardy was world champ, you believe Matt Hardy should be world champ. When Drew Galloway was world champ, you believed he should be world champ. And it shows because most of them end up going back to WWE. So it's not just the fact of throwing belts on them. They're building them up to main event stars. They're building them up to the top level where they should be. And then WWE just comes and picks them back up again. But, he was, if you look at Drew McIntyre when he was released originally in WWE to them, even when he was TNA World Champ or when he then come back to WWE, like if you put them pictures side by side, they don't even look like the same person. He's 6'5" or 6'4", whatever he is, but he was dead slim, had a little bit of muscle, no facial hair, like brown hair, and he was just like, oh yeah, he's all right. And then he come back as a monster. He's fucking huge. He looks like he's gained about 6 foot in height. His body mass, like his thighs alone, the muscle is ridiculous. And like, could you imagine him doing the Glasgow kiss, the headbutt he does back then? It was just, oh, it sounds, but now, like that's a full force headbutt. I know he doesn't really connect as what he could do because you can't in wrestling or whatever. But that looks brutal. It looks brutal. He went away and he trained and he become big. He bulked himself up, but he done it in the right way. And then obviously then these smaller companies start making him the world champ, because why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? He's a monster. And then he goes to TNA, and then that's when the eyes start going on him when he becomes TNA world champ. It's like, hang on a minute. This guy was nothing really in WWE. He was next to nothing. He was dancing around like an idiot in parts of 3MB. And now he's a world champ. Why is he world champ? I need to go and have a look. And the Claymore and just the whole thing of him. And again, he's never been fantastic on the mic, but TNA have worked on that and he's become better. He's still not fantastic now, but he's a lot better. And then he goes back to WWE and goes through NXT, becomes NXT champion, then gets to the main roster and doesn't become WWE champion straight away. It's on the slow build, the whole thing with Dolph Ziggler and becoming a tag team champion and stuff. But then when he becomes WWE champion, it's believable that he's a WWE champion. If he'd have been WWE champion in his first run, it would never have been believable and it probably would be forgot about. But he's gone away, banked on himself, come back as a megastar. He is a megastar, Drew McIntyre. Now, if you say Drew McIntyre to most people, even if they don't watch wrestling, they know who he is. Drew McIntyre now is a megastar. And he went away as a mid-carder and he come back again as a main eventer and then moved on to be a megastar. So Drew's number 5. Bobby Lashley in at number 4. Never been a fan of Bobby. He was alright in his first run. Again, another one, he just threw an ECW championship on him. Didn't mean nothing. That was a mess. And they just didn't put any faith in him. But early doors, he was, athletic. He looked good. And even when he was squashing guys in a couple of minute matches and that, you'd always thought there's something more to come from this dude. Like, there is more he can do. They're just not willing to show it right now. And I always expected, I think he was US champion, wasn't he? And I always expected him to become a WWE champion or world champion. I always expected him to go up and up and up. And then, like say, he ended up being ECW champion. And he ended up in that stupid storyline with Vince McMahon and Donald Trump. And it was just downhill from there. But I've never really got the buzz of Bobby. I don't understand it. I don't. But I can still appreciate he's athletic. And I can still appreciate that he should be a main event guy. And he should have been someone that they put loads of faith in, and they just didn't. Especially, like, a lot of people compare him to Brock Lesnar. And by the time that they could have pushed Bobby Lashley back in 2006, 2007, Brock had been out the company for a couple of years. He could have been their next Brock Lesnar. They just didn't have the faith in him. And he was terrible on a microphone. So instead of doing something with that, they just released him. Then, again, TNA come in and make him a star, make him a main eventer, make him someone that WWE wants to put the WWE Championship on. He was King of Mountain champion, he was X Division champion, but he was a four-time TNA World Champion. You know what I mean? And he was a TNA and he was a world champ at good peak times. Like, against your Galloways, against Kurt Angle and stuff like that. You know what I mean? When Kurt had come back. And, Bobby was the main guy. Like if you were watching TNA, he was the main guy. It's like you say, I've never been a big fan of his, but I can't deny that he was like in TNA. He was the guy at the time he was there. Like you know what I mean. Even if you were TNA World Champ, say if you were TNA World Champ, but you hadn't beat Bobby Lashley, then did it really mean as much? Like for me, even if you were TNA World Champ, you still had to beat Bobby Lashley for it to be an accomplishment, which sounds weird considering I don't understand it, but they made you believe he was that important, that he was the top of the top, he was the cream of the crop. And they put the belt on him 4 times, and he deserved it, and he should have been TNA World Champ 4 times. And then of course WWE end up luring him back, and then it takes forever to get him back up there. But they didn't bring him in and throw the belt straight on him, and I get that. That's fine. And they done the slow build, and what is he now? A former 2-time WWE champion. But you've got to think, if he'd have gone to TNA and not been a world champ in TNA, would WWE have brought him back at all? I don't think they would. I don't, because he was out for a good few years before they then brought him back. But you can't tell me if he'd have gone to TNA and just stayed in the mid card, that WWE would have brought him back and then put the time and the effort in to build him as a WWE champion. I don't think they would. So, but he is really successful outside after being just a mid card and just another guy in WWE. 4-time TNA champion, X Division champion, King of the Mountain champion. Number 4 is Bobby Lashley. Number 3, Christian Cage. Now, I've put Christian higher than a lot of people with higher championships, and people have won more championships, and people have won more championships in more companies. But Christian Cage, let's be honest, Christian was the start. He was the first guy to do it. He was the main first guy to leave WWE as a mid-carder, as a guy that should have been in the main event. You know what I mean? And you look at Edge, and Edge is fantastic. Edge is phenomenal. He's brilliant. He's done so much with his characters, the Rated R Superstar, and he was champ after champ after champ. But you look at it and you go, realistically, he was champ how many times? You could have given 1 or 2 of them reigns to Christian. You could have pushed up Christian. Christian could have easily been the ultimate face to Edge's heel. Like, I loved John Cena and Edge. Like, I thought they were perfect for each other. But then after a while, they needed the next thing, and the next thing could have been Christian, but they just didn't want to push Christian as main event. They didn't see him as value for money. So obviously he leaves just as a tag champion and intercontinental champion, and I think this was even the time, again, with the crappy silver ECW championship. It sort of seems like instead of giving them an official world championship reign, they'd throw the ECW championship on to see whether it'd draw eyes on them, and then use that as an excuse. Well, it didn't draw eyes on them because no one cared about the products and no one valued anyone as champ. So it wasn't like Christian's not a draw, or Matt's not a draw, or whoever else isn't a draw that's ECW champions, because no one cared about the belts, no one cared about the product that you were trying to sell us. Nothing to do with the guys that were wrestling. Christian leaves as a mid-carder and becomes a 2-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And he was the first guy really to come as a mid-carder from another company from WWE to another company in TNA and become a big star. Like, they brought him in. When they brought him in, they made people care about him. They brought him in as a top guy. They wanted him as the face of the company, and he was for a good while, you know what I mean? And that was a good period of the time where I'd stopped watching WWE. As soon as Christian became world champ, it was like all eyes were on it, and they didn't do it straight away. They did have him not win it for a good period of time before he did eventually win it, which I thought was good as well, because then people were tuning in more and more because they wanted to see Christian Cage as NWA champion. And he is probably the first guy to leave and become a megastar, because he did become a megastar, and you can't convince me otherwise, because everyone remembers Christian Cage as a world champion. And he goes back to WWE, and I hate what they done with him when he went back. They made him a 2-time world heavyweight champion just as a sort of, it's just more as a sort of thing to try and stop people talking about the fact that he was a champion in TNA. Because as soon as they give him the belt, and both times they took the belt straight off him, they took him off him like a week later and then like a month later in both his first title defences against Randy Orton. And I love Randy Orton, but no way should Christian be losing the belt twice straight away. Like, to me, it was sort of like, oh, we'll give you the world championships if you come back. So he comes back, and then it was like, yeah, but you left us, so we're going to make sure you feel like crap about your world championships. Like, who cares? Like, does anyone even remember Christian as a world champion in WWE? Not really. People remember Christian as world champion in TNA. Of course they do, yeah, because it was a big thing at the time. And like I say, he was the first real to go from mid card to main event, um, from leaving WWE, banking on themselves and becoming a star. Um, and then obviously he returns the Royal Rumble, and everyone assumes he signed with WWE, and he hasn't, and he shows up in AEW and becomes Impact World Champion, for the first ever time, which I thought was brilliant, perfect, and a lot of people compare Christian to Edge, and you're going to because they tagged for so many years and they're around the same age, but since returning, who's been a world champ? It ain't Edge. So in at number 3, Christian Cage. In at number 2, my man, Jon Moxley, got to be, and I know Mox has been a WWE champion, and I know I said previously about Jeff Hardy not being involved because Jeff is a world champ, so I did sort of contradict myself by putting Moxley in this, but Mox as WWE champion was overshadowed to hell. Like, when Jeff was the world champ in the company, he felt like the world champ. When Dean Ambrose was WWE champion, he was second fiddle to storylines with James Ellsworth. He didn't look like the top guy. He was never treated as a top guy. It was sort of, we're going to put this belt on you because we want to say all members of the Shield held the belt in one night. We want to say all members of the Shield are as successful as Evolution because they all become world champs. They didn't want him to be a world champ. They never treated him like a world champ. It was trash. And as much as I was excited and happy at the time when they put the WWE Championship on him, it was trash. It was garbage, and he never deserved it. So, although I've sort of contradicted myself by saying it, at least Jeff felt like a star at the time. Even if he left not long after becoming a world champ, he was still a star. Whereas Dean Ambrose, although he'd been WWE champion, was still a mid-carder when he left. At best, he was a mid-carder when he left WWE. Because they just didn't use him to his full potential. And then he goes on as Jon Moxley. He goes to Japan and becomes 2-time IWGP US champion. He's in the G1. There's eyes on him everywhere. And then he shows up in AEW and makes a massive impact. And they make him a star. AEW put everything into Jon Moxley to becoming the face of the company, to becoming Mr. AEW. Chris Jericho got the eyes on the company. Jon Moxley took it to the next level. Jon Moxley, obviously, 3-time AEW World Champion, 1-time AEW Interim Champion. Like I said before, 2-time IWGP US Champion. GCW World Champion. Again, put more eyes on another company. He's gone through how many different companies since he's left WWE. Obviously, he's mainly been with AEW, but he's done GCW, he's done New Japan, he's done New Japan Strong. He's done a lot of independent shows. He's done Bloodsport and everything else. And, he's a massive draw now. He's gone from being, like you say, a mid-carder, an afterthought, someone that you want to see pushed but not pushed, to being a superstar. He is. Jon Moxley is a superstar. You say Jon Moxley and everyone thinks Jon Moxley. No one thinks Dean Ambrose. You know what I mean? Dean Ambrose is dead. He's left in the trash. Like, he should have. Like, you look at this and you think, this dude had all this potential and WWE just didn't unlock it. They didn't know how to unlock it. Like, I never really knew of Jon Moxley before WWE. I never knew him in CZW. I'm never a CZW fan. I'm not going to sit here and pretend, oh yeah, I watched him from when he was like 12 or whatever. Like, I'm not one of them people who's going to lie to you and pretend that I'm a fan from forever. No, I didn't know him before WWE. But WWE didn't unlock his potential like they should have. And AEW did, and well, Jon Moxley did. John did himself when he left, and then he put that video up online, teasing him doing something with the blade and the running and stuff like that. And everyone thought it was a movie, and it wasn't. It was his return to the ring, and he was becoming the Death Rider. You know, in Japan, put eyes on Japan. That probably wouldn't have been on Japan. Maybe not been on Japan since Chris Jericho had been in there. You know, people start to tune in to watch him. Then, like say, he turns up in AEW and makes a massive impact. And then everyone knows who John Moxley is. But then, like, as a world champion, like, if you look, he's improved so much in the ring as well. You know, he's having big matches with big names, and he's making stars as well along the way. And, you know, he's fantastic. Like, I do love John Moxley, I'm not going to lie. But you can't deny he's come from, even though, like I say, I have messed up by saying Jeff couldn't be in this because of this. But, you know, Jeff was a main eventer when he left, even though John Moxley or Dean Ambrose technically had been WWE champion. He was not a main eventer when he left. He was never a main eventer when he was champion. He was always playing second fiddle to storylines and other people. Like AJ Styles felt like the star in the whole storyline there, not the champion Dean Ambrose, which is wrong. They should have made him look the star, and it shows how much that they could have done with him because of how much he's done since he's left. Like, he banked on himself, he bet on himself, you know, especially because he made there. They just keep reunion doing and rehashing of the Shield every so often. He's made there, you know what I mean? He could just do that every now and again and have the odd Intercontinental reign, the odd tag team reign, and he could have made good money. He didn't want that. He bet on himself, and look at him now. He's a world star. He's the face of the company. You know what I mean? And so it takes us to number one, and the only person that I could have ranked higher than John Moxley is Cody Rhodes. Has to be Cody. You know, he was mid-card. He was trash when he left WWE. He was. Like, you can put it any way you want. Stardust was garbage. Like, he knew it. We knew it. Everyone apart from Vince McMahon knew it. Stardust was utter bottom of the barrel crap. And he left. He bet on himself. You know, he's former Intercontinental champion, former tag team champion in WWE, and he looked like he had a lot of potential, especially in the days of Legacy. You know, Ted DiBiase Jr. is another one. He looked like he had so much potential, especially through that story. But Cody looked like he was going to be the next Randy. He looked like he was going to be the next star. And then they just lost faith in him somewhere along the line. Like, even you go back to the Money in the Bank ladder match when Damien Sandow won. Damien Sandow shouldn't have won that. Cody Rhodes should have won that, and they could have made something out of him. They could have pushed him. They could have made him the next star. They didn't pull the trigger on it. And he left, and he bet on himself. And it was the best thing he ever did, because he was never going to get made a star in WWE. They never wanted him as a star. For whatever reason, it was never going to work. So, you know, he starts doing the independents. He goes to TNA. He wins that made-up belt there that they done with the GFW, Next Gen or whatever. And then they started, you know, everyone started putting belts on him because they want attraction. You know, WCPW put the Internet Championship on him. You know, when he was starting to do a little bit of a belt collecting thing himself, and he wasn't sure where he was going to go, and he was bouncing around a little bit, just getting the odd belt here and there just to put eyes on companies. And then he went to Ring of Honor, and then he started putting time and effort into his character, and he was trying to, at first he was feeling what he was going to do next, and then he became the American Nightmare, and then he started to build himself as main eventer. When he finally found somewhere he wanted to stay, and he had the time to find out what his next character was going to be, you know, the whole build up of the American Nightmare was fantastic. And then he became Ring of Honor World Champion, and he had the diamond ring, and the whole thing there was just brilliant. And then he was a member in the Bullet Club, and then he was trying to take over the Bullet Club, and he became IWGP US Champion. He became NWA World Heavyweight Champion. You know, it's just, he's picking up these world championships, and they've all got big history, you know what I mean? And then obviously, like you say, the US as well, in Japan. You know, and everyone starts following, and he started getting a massive cult following, and then he started pushing the barriers, and then he started looking at things that you shouldn't really be doing in wrestling. You know, the whole Ring of Honor invades Raw, that sort of thing. It was like a throwback to the old DX where they turn up and they say that they're outside Raw, and that went on the internet. That went massive, and remember people actually believing that Cody and the Bucks and Hangman and Scale and that were going to invade Raw. And he started pushing the boat out, and through the help of Kenny Omega and the help of the Young Bucks and the likes of being the Elite and that, but he fully fledged went straight into this character, and he put everything into this character, and it builds him and it builds him and it builds him, and he become a star after star after star, and then he become into AEW, and then the thing that pissed me off is the fact that he never won the AEW World Championship. He booked himself into a corner and couldn't do much with that. But he was three-time TNT champion. He was the first ever TNT champion. He was the start of the whole Open Challenge. He was, and he has that fantastic match with his brother, with Dustin. And then he has the fantastic tag team match with the Young Bucks when he teams with Dustin. And then he becomes a megastar. He becomes someone, and WWE can't deny it anymore, and they want to bring him back. But they're bringing him back not just to be another guy, they're bringing him back to be the next face of the company. They want him to be the next star. Like, he will go against Roman Reigns and he will pin Roman Reigns and he will take the titles, but it won't just be a flash in the pan like Christian Cage. He will be the next face of WWE because they can't deny him any longer. He is a superstar. He is a mega massive name in wrestling, and he's done it himself by backing himself. From going with the stupid mask thing to the stupid tash thing to the stupid face paint crap. All that stuff that he had, all that stuff that he had to endure the first time. And now look at him, he's the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, and they've allowed him to bring that gimmick from the Indies, from Ring of Honor, over to the main stage, to WWE, and they've marketed it well, and he's done so well in what he's done. Is he's capitalised on the fact that WWE need the next face of the company, and he is that face. And as much as it hurt me for him to leave AEW because I didn't want him to go back to WWE, he's gone back and he is a big deal, and he will be the next big thing in WWE, and you can mark that down. And that is why he is number one, because he's been a three-time AEW TNT champion, because he's been a IWGP US champion, because he's been a Ring of Honor World champion, because he's been an NWA World champion, because he helped with Kenny Omega in the Bucks to create All In and create a whole buzz around independence, because he wouldn't back down when Dave Meltzer said they couldn't sell they couldn't sell out the arena without WWE's name behind it, and he got under the skin, and he done it in, what was it, like 20 minutes or something, because he went to Japan and challenged Kenny Omega for the leadership of the Bullet Club, which had been a faction for the main part of 7-8 years at the time, because he was one of the main stars and the main start-out points in building AEW. All these different things. It's not just him going to TNA and becoming a champion, or going to Ring of Honor and becoming a champion. It's the other bits that he did as well to build up the next thing, like to help build AEW, to help with All In, to put eyes on, or continue to put eyes on New Japan, to put eyes back on Ring of Honor when Ring of Honor started to fail and didn't feel like a big thing at the time. These are all the different things that makes Cody Rhodes number one in this list. It's not just about the championships, it's about him becoming the next superstar, and Cody Rhodes is the next superstar and the next big thing in WWE, and that's because he left as a mid-carder, he banked on himself, and he's returned as a megastar. So that is my top 10, and the video is probably longer than I wanted it to be, but there you go. So it's number 10, it's Claudio Castagnoli, or Cesaro. Number 9 is John Morrison. Number 8, Rich Swann. Number 7, Matt Hardy. Number 6, Matt Cardona. Number 5, Drew McIntyre. Number 4, Bobby Lashley. Number 3, Christian Cage. Number 2, Jon Moxley. And number 1, Cody Rhodes. So if you're still here with me, then thank you so much for watching. Let me know if there's anyone you disagree with. Let me know if the order you think's wrong. If there's anyone that should be in there, if there's anyone that shouldn't be in there, let me know in the comment section. Give me a like, give me a comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And obviously keep an eye out for more wrestling related videos coming soon. There'll be more wrestling unboxing videos, and there'll be more rankings videos coming soon. And as always, thank you for watching, and thanks to David Anderson for sorting me out another really good thumbnail for my YouTube channel. So thank you to all that watch, and I'll see you soon.